Welcome to this focus stacking tutorial. The first thing you should know is that you can open on the inserted flash drive a focus stacking guide which gives step-by-step instructions for everything that we're going to be covering in this video. So you can follow along with that or just follow the video. The first thing that you'll want to do is make sure that your working space is well lit. And then you want to make sure that your camera is set to the right magnification. For this video I'm going to do it at 2 times, which is the 2:1 ratio. You'll want to place your object on the tracks underneath the camera and then remove the lens cover from the camera. The first thing that we'll do on the computer is make sure that you have a project folder where you can save everything that you're working on. I'll name mine Penny Stack because that's what I'm using for an example. Next, you'll just want to make sure that your camera is turned on, and then I'll show you how to link that to the computer. This window should open up automatically as soon as you turn on the camera, but if it doesn't, you can go back to the inserted flash drive and open it up manually. Once you see this window, click on Remote Shooting and then Preferences, Destination folder, and then find the folder that you made for this project, and it'll automatically save all of the images that you take on the camera into this folder. And make sure that this Create a Subfolder option is not selected. Set this switch to MF or Manual Focus. The rest of these settings depend on personal preference, so you can either match what I have here or you can check under Step 3 Part D of the Focus Stacking Guide for more details on each one. You'll then select Live View Shoot, which will pull up a window showing you what the camera sees. Once that's open, we'll open the Focus Stacking software, which is the icon that looks like a gray and white present. The next thing we'll want to do is connect the focus stacking rails in camera to the system through File, Connect, SNS, and then COM11 for the 5x setup and COM12 for the 2x setup. Both of the provided cameras have a sensor width of 36mm and a sensor height of 24mm. The magnification should match whichever camera you're using. Next, we'll use the calculator under Tools to figure out the depth of field. The 2x magnification camera is a generic lens configuration. The f-stop will match the f value on the camera as seen here, and the magnification will be set to 2. For the 5x magnification lens, there is no variable f-stop value, and the step size will always be set to 20.571 micrometers. Going back to the 2x magnification camera, we'll take the calculated step size here and plug it in as the depth of field, or DOF, making sure the units stay in micrometers or and don't switch to millimeters. You can refer to the Focus Stacking Guide for more details on minimum overlap, but for now I can leave it at 20% and that's always worked just fine for me. Next, you'll go to the View, Show Timing, and then change your wait, hold, and snap times. Your wait and your hold time should be set between 5 and 800 milliseconds. Your snap time should match your shutter speed time, which I have set to 0.6 seconds or 600 milliseconds in this example. Make sure your sensor width and sensor height are set back to 36 and 24 millimeters respectively. Once those are all set up, I'll take a test image by clicking this button up here just to make sure that our lighting looks okay. So this one looks pretty good. If the image is too dark, you can do a couple of things. You can either add more lighting onto your object, you can make a slower shutter speed, you can open up the aperture, or you can change the ISO. The easiest thing is generally to set a slower shutter speed. If the image looks too light, you'll just do the opposite of all of those things, the easiest thing being making a faster shutter speed. I know I went through that kind of fast. If you want more details on it, you can either look it up online or refer to the focus stacking guide. Just make sure that if you do adjust your shutter speed, that you go back and adjust your snap time to match that. When you're happy with your brightness and all of your general and timing settings are good to go, we'll set the X, Y, and Z axes, which is where the pictures will actually be taken. Make sure your live view shoot window over here is open and on the screen so you can see where your axes are going to. To set our axes, we'll hold the shift key and then left and right arrows to change the X, up and down arrows to change the Y, and PG up, PG down arrows to adjust the Z. This next bit of information is important to know, but please be careful when adjusting the limits of your axes so you don't cause any problems to the actual rig. If you're seeing a warning that your axis is limited, but you see on the rig itself that there's still plenty of room for it to move, you can use the control key along with the respective left, right, up, down, or PG up, PG down keys to adjust the limit. If you hear any of the motors on the rig start clicking, it means you've gone too far and you shouldn't be trying to adjust the axis anymore. So we'll now set our x-axis limits by using, again, the shift and left-right keys. We'll go just to the left of the most left point of our object to just to the right of the farthest right point, and make sure to leave a little bit of room in all of these axes for cropping later. Make sure you actually set your start and end points by clicking the set buttons once you're happy with where it is on each respective end of the axis you're setting. We'll do the same thing with our y-axis, again using the shift and then up down arrow keys instead. And again, just going a little above and a little below to set your points so that we can crop later. Make sure you're happy with the endpoints for your X and your Y before setting the Z, because if you set the Z and then try to adjust the X and Y, it'll delete what you've done for the Z. The Z-axis adjusts how close the camera actually is to the object, so that will change what part of it is in focus. But we'll do the same thing. You want your focus to go to just below the lowest point of the object to just above the highest point of the object. Next, we'll hit Copy All Z, and that'll apply the Z-axis to each frame that the camera is going to want to be taking. Once you've set all your ranges, you can see how many frames are going to be taken by these rectangles. So for my example, you can see 4 separate rectangles, and that means it'll be taken in 4 separate frames. You can double click on each frame and it'll snap your live view shoot to where that frame will be taken. This system does give you the capability to adjust the Z range for each different frame. But for most flat objects, you'll just want them all to be the same, so you can use the copy Z function. If you want to experiment with setting the Z-axis separately for each frame, you're more than welcome to try it. Once everything's set up, we can actually start taking our images. The first thing you want to do is close our live view shoot. You'll notice that if you don't close it and you start it, you won't actually hear any clicking because the camera won't actually be taking pictures. So make sure to close that, and then you can hit stack XY and your camera will start taking the pictures. Once you start taking the pictures, this preview window will pull up, and that's kind of nice. You can just kind of monitor the progress of each image by watching that. For now, we'll just let the camera do its thing. It'll go through all of the images, through all of the frames, and save everything to that same folder we have set up. The time that this will take will vary depending on the size and depth of the object that you're imaging, but for this example, I'll go ahead and speed it up. Once all your pictures are taken, the next program we'll open is the Helicon Focus program, and that's where we'll stack all of the images together. It'll combine all of them, taking the most focused point from each picture and combining them to make one really clear image that has the depth all the way through. Once Helicon Focus is open, we'll click File, Open Images, find your folder where all of your images are saved, and then you want to click the first image and then find all of the images with that same frame. So all of the images that are taken in the same spot but only a different focus point. Once you find the last image with the same frame, you can hold shift and click that one and it'll select all of the images in between. Open all of those images into Helicon Focus, and then there are 3 different rendering methods. I won't go into detail on all of them here. There's more information on them in the stacking guide. But my favorite personally is the pyramid method, and I'll set the radius to 1 normally. A finer or smaller radius does a better job at keeping the detail. A larger radius is more forgiving, but as long as you haven't bumped the table or anything while your images were being taken, you can use the smallest radius size. So then you'll hit the render button and it'll automatically start flipping through all of the images, taking the most detailed portions of each image and combining it into your final image. So you can see how it took the images from this frame and turned them into a super focused image it's captured all of the depth of your object. And we'll do the same thing for each of the frames. For this example, remember there were 4 frames and they'll all have the same amount of images, just because I didn't change any of the Z bounds for any of the frames. Just make sure that you don't catch any images from a different frame in your stack when you're opening it, or it'll throw the whole thing off. I'm going to speed up the video here, but it's just doing the same thing for all of the frames. Once all of the frames are finished stacking, we'll save all of them. I like to save them all just as parts 1 through whatever. In this example, there are 4, and that just helps me keep track of them. And the next step is done in Photoshop, so we'll just want to open that program up. Once that's open, we'll go to File, Browse and Bridge, and then find all of the parts that you just stacked in Helicon Focus. You select all of those parts and then go to Tools, Photoshop, Photo Merge. Now Photoshop will merge all of your parts together into one final image. And before we do any cropping or other adjustments, we'll want to flatten the layers by either selecting all of them and right-clicking and then clicking flatten, or selecting all of them and using the hotkey Control-E. Once the image is flattened, we can crop any of the excess parts out, and that will help us to just form one nice clean image. And something that wasn't a problem in this example, but is sometimes a thing that shows up in focus stacking, is burnt out pixels. So if this is something that's happening for you, you'll notice red or white or blue hair-like things showing up in your image, and this can fairly easily be fixed with the healing brush in Photoshop. So I would invite you to look that up if it's something you're noticing. But for now, this is looking really good, so we'll just save our final image and then we can do whatever we want with it. All you have left to do is to clean up, so you can turn off the lights. And then make sure that your camera is turned off and that the lens cover is put back on.